So this is just a quick video with a couple of tips about sketching, which we kind of covered in class last week, and basic fundamentals of things that you need to know when you're drawing. First thing is, if you're using Bic pens, they're really nice to use. They're a little bit like pencils. They work in the same way, in the sense that the lighter you press, the lighter the line. If you press harder, you get a harder line, and if you push fairly hard, the line's quite dark. This works really well because when you sketch, you can kind of build up a gradient of colour with a Bic pen, and if you push a little bit harder, you can actually darken it down. So in some ways you can actually kind of render with a Bic, but that's why it's really, really nice for sketching, because part of sketching is about building up in layers, which is what we'll talk about in a minute. Some ballpoint pens don't work so well. Bics tend to work really well because they have a soft tip on here, and you need to have a number of layers of paper below to soften the paper when you work. If you've only got one sheet of paper, it won't work too well. So Bics are good to draw with. A couple of things you need to think about with your sketching. First thing is drawing straight lines. Now when I draw, I tend to keep my wrist locked and I draw from my elbow. It just means that when I sketch, the lines are relatively straight, and you can just keep on drawing straight lines because you're drawing from your shoulder and your elbow rather than trying to draw with your wrist. If you're trying to draw a straight line with your wrist, you'll draw a curvy line. What you don't want to do is sketch lines like this. We see a lot of students coming in when they first learn to sketch, and they're kind of sketching lines like that, feathered lines. What it shows is a lack of confidence, and what you need to do is just commit a little bit more to actually drawing and get confident at just drawing one line. Now that's easier to do if you plot 2 points. So if I was drawing here and I put a point here and a point here, then when I sketch between those 2 points, I've got something to aim for, like this. Now that works really well in 2D, it works extremely well in 3D. If I was sketching in 3D, I might put a point there, a point here, point here, point here, and one there. Now you can't see it at the minute, but I know that when I join all those lines up, what I'm going to have is a fairly accurate cube in perspective. But we'll get into that next week. So yeah, using points is nice because it helps you work out where you want the pen to go to. So a point here and a point here, and I tend to build like that when I'm sketching. I tend to build up in little dots. So the first thing are points. Second thing is keeping your wrist straight and draw really, really nice clean lines. That's really important to do. So for example, if we were going to do a clothes peg, which we did the other day, I would use the Bic pen, push lightly. You want to build up your sketches gently. So if I put a gentle line in here, like that, and I put a little dot there, and I draw the line across, and another line across, and a line down. Now when I'm drawing lines down, I keep my wrist locked and I just use my fingers like this, you see. And when I'm drawing a line across, I tend to use my arm like that. Now draw a basic square. To find the centre, you would cross it over like this, and this gives me the exact centre. Now these lines are very faint at the minute. I'm hardly pushing down with this at all. It's very, very light, and I can start to sketch out now what I want from the drawing. So for example, I can put a circle in there, very faint, and maybe another one in here, maybe another one there, maybe the spring, the top of the spring, the bottom of the spring will go there, and the sort of clothes peg is going to nip into about this point on the centre. And all I'm really doing here is just building up where I want the lines to go. It's a loose sketch, but it's starting to get character. Once I've kind of worked out where I want to go, then I might start adding a bit more detail and using the pressure of the pen, the Bic pen, to start adding little bits in. So now I'm going to keep this line, so I'm going to make that a little bit darker. And I might keep this one, and we come through here. This can be the spring, so I'll put the line in there, and I'll keep that line there, and keep this line here, and we'll make that line a little bit stronger here. Make that one stronger there. And now I can work over them again. Now I've looked at that and I'm like, right, it looks kind of right. I can keep on working on the sketch. So good sketching isn't about doing it right first time. What it's really about is building it up over layers. You know, you can take a rough sketch and just keep adding detail to it, and a bit like painting, isn't it? When you paint, it takes a while to build it up. So the other thing was the geometry. So at the minute, it's not a great sketch, but it does sort of give me an idea about what I want this concept to be. So that's kind of worked out. The next thing I'd probably want to do is stick annotations on it. So I'd put a couple of arrows in there, and I'd put a little bit of text, whatever that's about. maybe another arrow in here, a little bit of text there, whatever that's about, and maybe some more. So you always want to start annotating your drawings, and the reason that's important is because if someone else is to pick up your design work and talk to you about it, or you come back to your drawings 6 months later or a year later, what you want to be able to do is remember where you were in your thinking. And design sketching is really a thinking process. You should be at a stage where you're actually thinking through ideas on paper. So you put annotations and notes on, and you want to number your drawings, number 1, and you give them a title, so it has a closed peg. Now, if we were to evolve that a little bit, what I might want to do is a thumbnail sketch. Now, thumbnails are really, really good because they help me work through an idea very quickly without committing too much time to it. So if I was to do a thumbnail sketch, I might do another box down here because I know the general size of the closed peg I want. Find the centre, and let's say I wanted it to be curved. So I might put a point here and a point here. So I'll do a couple of curvy lines like this. And let's say I want the hole to be further back and a hole at the front and the centre to be there and a little pinch at the back. So I can kind of work on an idea here for a closed peg very, very quickly. Maybe put a bit of shading on one side to add a little bit of tone, like that, and firm the line up, and the spring will probably go about here, like this. So as a thumbnail sketch, it's quite quick. I could put some black behind it, like this, just to kind of make a bit of it stand out. So that stands out off the page. Now you can add these little boxes behind some of your sketches because it just gives you a little bit of contrast behind the work, just so it stands out off the page a little bit. Like that. So just fill that in. Doesn't need to be perfect, as long as I can see what's going on. Right, so this could be thumbnail, so I'd call this sketch number 2, and I might just say that's rounded in there. And then what I can do is I can take that thumbnail, I can ask questions about it. Do I like it? Do I not like it? Maybe I could take a little piece out here, a little piece out here, add some detail into it. And then I can move that over and start to re-sketch it over here. So I can take the proportions. Now if we sketch that in half, you can see it's symmetrical. So when I draw another box here, if I draw this one a little bit faster, how I would do if I was sketching normally, I'd find the centre like this, come back to my thumbnail, say, right, so that circle's going to be about here, and you've got these curves. They come about halfway through these two lines, one here, one here. So then I can kind of just very gently put that line in there, and the same with the other way around. We've got another circle in there somewhere, and these lines come into about there. So we can start to build this up. Okay, so a little bit of detail there as well. We put detail there, one here, spring can go there, and so on. So now I can take this sketch and actually start to build this one up a little bit as well. Like that. Maybe add in some more details around the edges here before I commit to these lines. So I can make these lines stronger, look, add in a little bit more detail like there, bit in there. Same with this one. But you get the idea. Start off light and then work up on your drawings and just keep adding more and more detail to your work. You can put some shading, if you want, darken some bits down where the two parts would connect. And then once you've got a sketch that you kind of like, you could put some annotations on it. Now bearing in mind I'm doing this really, really quick. If I was actually doing this in a studio, I'd probably spend about another 5 minutes sort of doing this sketch to kind of make it look a little bit more convincing. This would be sketch number 3. And I'd say it's curved. There, like this, right? Now you can tell a story here. I can draw a line from this one. Put some lines in there, make it a bit fancy, make it look nice. And I can take a sketch from there. Put some nice little lines in there to sort of show some narrative. You can change the colours. You can put some red in too. So I might put some arrows in there in red, and I might, so you could actually just do all your arrows in a red colour. Just makes your drawings look a little bit more interesting, and it draws the eye. And then you might use blue for your text. So you might put a little bit of text in there in blue. And you're using 3 colours, all from Bic pens, and it starts to push things out the page. Now, if you were doing a concept sketch, something completely new that you hadn't drawn before, Let's just say you were drawing a hairdryer or something like that, or some kind of gadget or gizmo. You want to use these cubed perspective, this cubed sort of way of breaking things up, to kind of build a sketch, even if you don't quite know where it's going. Now, you're in your mind's eye, you should be able to see things as you start to work. So if I was going to do a hairdryer or some kind of gadget or gizmo like that, first of all I'd find like where the centre line is, and then I'd probably think about where the handle would be. So that's a little bit too high, so I'd bring that down a bit. And then what I'd want to do is think about where the front is and the back is. So all I'm doing is I'm just creating bigger boxes. Now, like I said before, you should never really draw anything that's bigger than your hand. Once you start drawing things that are too big on the paper, you spend a lot of time putting lots of detail in, which is why thumbnails like this work really, really well. You should never draw anything bigger than your hand, because it's a waste of time and there's no need for it. If you need to put more detail in, then you can do a detail image after you've drawn the concept sketch, right? So I would block that in. I'd say I kind of want it to be about that sort of size. Handle's going to come down here, and I want the curve to come to here. So, and maybe this is going to be the height of the curve. This can be the front. This can be the back, and then I would just start to build that in like this. That comes about there. It doesn't matter that these lines are scrappy. See how I put little dots in when I'm happy with a line? It just commits to it and just makes it visual where parts are. Handle's going to come down here somewhere, so I'll bring that back up here. Centre line, add another piece in the back just for a little bit of detail. I'd say the handle's going to come to about here, and there'll be a little bit of a line that will bring through there. And we might put some vents in the top, so I'll sketch a little bit in here to add some vents in. Now you can see I'm building this up. I'm not committing heavy lines unless I'm happy with them. The rest of them are very scrappy. These lines here, they're all kind of all over the place, and it's because I'm still sort of working out what I want. I don't quite know what I want yet, but I'm adding detail into it as I go and sort of working it out on the fly. That's kind of where you need to be. And when you've got a bit more idea about something you're happy with, let's say I was happy with these grills up here, which I'm not really, but I'll just do this anyway because I'm talking about it. You can start to add in a little bit more detail to just sort of confirm that part of the sketch. Like this, maybe a little bit of shadow in there, a bit of shadow in there, like this. Maybe a couple of little holes for screws, so it just looks a little bit more finished. And we'll come down here, add a bit on the front, like that. So this is kind of turning out so. I always like it when you put sweeping lines into drawings. It's nice. And don't be scared of letting your lines come off the page. When you're actually sketching, having loose lines is quite nice, like that. They don't need to be too finished, because when you capture them in these heavier lines around the outside, it kind of frames it for you anyway. Right. So what I would normally do is turn the paper. I'm not going to do that because you can't see it on the camera, but you should always turn your paper a little bit when you're sketching. Makes life a little bit easier. Okay, so we'll finish this one up for now. We want to put some detail into the handle. So work out where that's going to go. It's going to go to about there. Maybe something like that. And then there might be another little grill in here. Maybe there's a vent of some sort where more air comes out. And what starts to work is you get this nice balance between darker lines and heavier lines when you sketch. And that just sort of brings out the sketch a little bit more detail in there. Maybe I'll darken this down, shade that in. Maybe make this a little bit more solid on the back. What you don't want to have is a situation where everything's really, really heavy. You want to have some lines fairly faint inside, and you want to have the outside lines fairly strong, because that will give you the contrast that frames the sketch. The more you keep working on this, the more detail you add to it, the more convincing it starts to look. You can put little bits in there like ZSX 750 or something like that, just to kind of give it a bit of character. Maybe some little buttons at the back and some screw holes. You can make it look a bit like chrome by putting a reflection in there like this. Like that, sort of make it look like it's metallic. We'll get into doing all these things another week. Like that, and maybe start to shade certain parts in. There might be the grips. There'll be something maybe on the bottom here. This is maybe where the cable would come out, so I'll just indicate that a little bit. Put some shadow on there to frame it. A couple of little holes where screws might be. And we'll darken this bit down in here, because that'll indicate where a colour is. Right? So it's very, very quick, it's very, very rough, but that's the point in it. You just keep working on the sketch. Now the speed that I'm sketching at is important. You want to get used to drawing really fast. As soon as you start caring too much about your sketch, your sketches actually get worse. You actually get better at drawing the less you care. The faster you get with it, the better you get. So I would just practice being really, really rough. Don't care too much about how you think the sketch is going to turn out, but just keep it playful and keep it loose. If you wanted to do like a detail, you might take a section like this. You could take a red pen. You might indicate there's a detail here. And you might bring that down here. You might take a little piece of that off. And you might draw something up in greater detail. This is what I meant before. I wouldn't worry too much about drawing things big. I would draw things small. And then if you want to take a detail or something off, bring it off somewhere else and just work on it. Not quite sure what I'm trying to achieve here actually, but I'll do this like a little thumbnail sketch quickly. So this might be a vent of some sort. Now anything with air behind it has a darker line, so that's going to have a darker line, that's going to have a darker line, and that's going to have a darker line there. And I might frame the outside of that, and this might be slightly shaded because of the shadow that you'd get from the edge. So I'll put an edge in there, and then an edge in the top here, and maybe a couple of little details for screws. Now what I can then do is get my red again, and just put a couple of arrows in there, and then I could say with the blue pen, that's like a vent, or something, a bit of details about the vent. And just keep working away at your sketch. Just keep adding little bits here and there. This would be sketch number, let's have a look. If that was a continuation, I might do that and say this is sketch number 4. Dryer or something like this, whatever, who knows. This is all very quick, this is really rough stuff, but this is how you should work. So, the things to remember: straight lines, dots to straight lines. If you're drawing in 3D, which we'll do another week, you want to start using your hand being very loose with your Bic pen and put little dots in where you want things, and try and get used to doing consistently straight lines. Be confident with your lines and practice them and get good at them. Build everything up in layers. Start off with like a basic outline and then add detail to it. We're not doing 3D yet, we'll do that in a couple of weeks. But you want to get used to, when you're sketching, switching between a 2D sketch and a 3D sketch. And then when you've got an idea, like I said before, you might bring this down here, and there might be a part of this that you like. So you might want to do very, very quick thumbnail sketches. Thumbnail sketches are really good because they help you understand the form of something really fast without committing too much time to it. So you might do another sketch like this in there. So you might start just basically play around with it like that, just to get an idea of what you want. If you're not happy with something, you can always change it like this, and then you could always box that bit in. If you've made a bit of a mess of the sketch like I've just done there, you can always, with a thumbnail, just block all that in, just to hide it a little bit. like that, thumbnail sketch, and then move that on and do something a little bit more detailed. Okay. Other things you want to think about as well are when you're doing circles and ellipses. You need to get used to drawing circles and ellipses. It's really, really important. And the best way to learn to draw circles is to draw them in boxes, and because that will teach you to constrain the circle like this. Yeah, if you're just trying to draw a circle without any practice, I've had a few years of doing it, so it's not too bad. But if you want to learn to draw circles properly, draw lots of boxes up and try and make your circles fit within them. You'll find that as you're drawing bigger circles, the bigger you get, the more you use your wrist. So if I was drawing something that's this size, I tend to lock my wrist actually and just use my shoulder like this, right? If I was drawing a circle that was smaller, I'd be using my fingers. So it just depends on what you're using. I very rarely use my actual wrist to draw circles because it's difficult and it's not very consistent. If you're doing ellipses, if you're kind of doing oval circles, you can learn yourself to draw those by drawing rectangle boxes like this, and you learn again to make the oval sit nicely inside the box. It's good practice to do it. It's really, really important because when you start coming to do 3D bits and pieces, so if we were doing 3D tubes or cylinders, if you can draw with ovals like this, for example, you can draw things quite nicely, quite fast. That could be a battery, for example. So I'll put a centre line through it and then do another circle at the bottom and connect it. Here, do the top. Connect those two parts there, for example, and put a bit of shading in. Firm up the lines I want to keep. Maybe add a little bit at the bottom here. Like this. Or if you were doing something that was coming towards you, because you're practicing doing the circles, you've probably got an idea about how that might look. And then you could do a line here. That might be the back. Now that's not gone as well as I wanted because I'm trying to draw it too big. When you're overdrawing something, if you're overdrawing the size, it actually makes your life a little bit more tricky in completing the lines properly. And your eye will pick up on it straight away. If it doesn't look right, your eye will find it. So drawing smaller is actually better. So you can actually see here how the bits are really nice. You can just sort of build up nice little lines. I'm just doing very, very faint. Anything with air behind it, like here, would be a darker line. Yeah. And then if you want to make that chromed, I might put a little bit of a line there. Drag that line up. Drag that line down. And then just sort of shade that in a little bit. I don't know what that is really, but anyway, you get the idea. So, work quick, work smart. Straight lines, dot to dot. Keep them clean. Lock your arm. Build things up. Start to sketch in boxes. Start to use construction lines to find the centres of things. When you work out what you want to do, put more detail in. Keep adding detail until you get what you want. And when you've done that, add a little bit of tone in different places to add a bit of character and definition. Use strong lines to capture the outside of things, whatever they are, and to frame things, but don't mix the two. Keep the lines on the inside faint, keep the outlines on the outside strong. Use annotations that explain what the drawings are all about. Number the drawings, give them a title, and try and pull everything together on the page. Try and tell a bit of story. If you've got a drawing here and a drawing here, just put some arrows in, nice and gentle, but just sort of create a bit of synthesis on the page and move things around. Yeah.